Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the next episode of Overcome Yourself, the podcast. As you know, my name is Nicole, and I'm so excited to be here today with Alara. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Because I didn't ask you before we started.
Yes, that's correct.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So, thank you so much for being here with us today. And please go ahead and take it away and let us know who you are, Alara, and who you help.
Absolutely. So, my name is Alara Sage, and I am the Oracle of Wealth. And I really have a mission to create a movement around how we are creating wealth in this world. We have been taught that there is scarcity, that there is lack, that we should be afraid, that there's never enough. And I personally experienced this while I had plenty of money. We often think the only people who have no money have this fear, have this anxiety, and it's just not true because it's what we've been taught by society that there just isn't enough. So even if you have enough money, quote unquote, you better keep working to get more. And in 2021, I had a really successful business. I really had everything from the external looking in. My business was very good. I had plenty of money in the bank. And yet I was feeling anxiety around money. I still didn't even want to look at my bank account. And I would still fear not having enough, even though I had plenty. And the interesting thing is in the fall of 2021, I had this devastating blow where all of my money was stolen from me.
Oh, my.
And it was in this moment, I remember it so clearly. I was sitting at this computer in the kitchen, and I was working with this mentor who had been recommended to me, who I trusted, right? This wasn't off the internet. It wasn't like an email I received. This was a person I'd been working with for about a month that had been referred to me by a friend. And he literally scammed me. And I watched my bank account go to zero. And then he erased everything and disappeared. And I literally dropped to the floor in shock and despair and kind of like, what just happened to me? And I've always been able to create my reality really clearly and powerfully. So even in that moment, I definitely felt the fear. And I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to turn this around and I'm just going to make the money back, six figures. I'll just make it back. And then I had another blow where in the next couple of months, my entire business collapsed and I went into debt. And I had to face some really deep subconscious belief structures around scarcity, that there's this lack, and that I was in such a heightened state of fight or flight. My nervous system was contracted. I wasn't making decisions from a place of groundedness and centeredness. I was making all of my decisions from this fear and this anxiety. And through recognizing that, I learned how to use my breath to shift my nervous system and bring myself into a regulated nervous system and learn how to rewire my body and my mind and my emotions around money. And just realizing that all humans have this, no matter what our levels of wealth are, that we can have these fears and anxieties around wealth. So I help people to transform that anxiety, that fear, that not enoughness, that belief that we have to hustle, we have to grind, we have to push, we have to do all of these things that are very exhausting in order to feel safe in money. And then surprisingly enough, it never really works. So I'm here to create a movement where we actually recognize what it truly means to be inexhaustible wealth, what it means when we say that we are so abundant, that we are so wealthy. And I help people to connect to their bodies through their breath and connect to and shift their nervous system so that they can start to really be grounded in their life and in their experiences and recognize these patterns that they've created and shift those patterns and actually experience wealth that feels good, wealth that feels effortless.
I love that so much. Um, you alluded to something very important in the beginning, and you talked about abundance, even when it's not related to money. And so that made me think of there's a quote from a book that I'm it's on my list to read. The Soul of Money, I believe it's called. And it talks about how lack can show up in places like when we wake up and we're like, oh, I didn't get enough sleep. So can you talk to me a little bit about how this lack mentality shows up in some other places that are not necessarily related to money, but something we can spot and be like, oh, wow, I didn't even realize that was a lack mentality.
That's a great question. So I define wealth as resource, not money. Money is
Love
absolutely
it.
one of those resources and a very important resource currently in our human reality. Another one of those resources is time. So people who feel like they never have enough time, right? Who feel like there aren't enough hours in the day. And there is truth that there are only so many hours in a day, right? Like, let's not pretend that that's not real. And simultaneously, we can still structure our lives in a way that feels good and that we are not cramming ourselves in a to-do list that is coming from this belief that we are already in lack. So we better catch up, right? That's where it's the belief of lack in our nervous system that creates this society where we have to cram our schedule and that we feel that the only way we succeed is through productivity. And recognizing that, yes, while there are only 24 hours in a day, it's really what you do with that time that matters, not how much you do in that time.
I love that. And it makes me think of the bunny. The bunny? Was he a bunny? In Alice in Wonderland, that he was just always running around like, I'm late, I'm late, I'm late for what? I'm late. I don't know. I don't know what I'm late for, but I'm late. Right? And so you're always behind. You're always just behind. And that is such an interesting picture of our society because that's yeah, we're always late. We're always running to the next thing. And so I absolutely love that and seeing the abundance in those moments, right? Because it's I love how you put it that money is just one of the resources that we use. And even in business, I tell my clients, you have a choice. You can either invest time or you can invest money, but we're going to have to make an investment of something. So it alludes perfectly to that, to, you know, your time also being a resource. Can you tell me a little bit about what part gratitude plays in this picture?
Gratitude really opens us up to receive more because where we focus, what we focus on is where our energy flows. And so when you are focused on what you have, you are actually telling your brain, and this is neuroscience, this is not just spirituality. You're actually telling your brain that I have. I'm so grateful that I have. And so what this does is this is programming your brain through your perspective and your belief structures. It also programs your cells that you have. And our reality is through our perception. This is quantum mechanics of understanding the observer actually changes how the reality shows up. You will perceive the world through your belief structures. So when you believe that you have enough, when you continue to focus on how much you have and continue to program your body and your brain, your cells with what you have already, you see the world through the lens of abundance, of gratitude, of havingness, rather than it's not enough, I need more.
That it's so important. And it's to note that it's not that those things weren't there before. What we're doing with this is we are adjusting our perception so we can see what's already there. The problem is that we're wearing these glasses of lack, and so they're like blacked out, right? Like they have like black stuff on them, dirt, and so you can't see. And so we're kind of clearing off the lens, and we're like, how can we see from this perspective? And that is just so powerful. And you mentioned that you have been in fight or flight for a really long time. And I can relate to that. I'm sure a lot of people in the audience can relate to that. And you mentioned that you use breath work. So can you talk to us a little bit about how that works? If you have any tips for us on using breath work to get out of fight or flight?
Yeah, I would like to back up just a little bit because actually before fight or flight,
Yes.
I was in freeze or fawn, which is a lot
Yes.
of a state that people don't recognize. It's where we've gone past fight or flight, we're actually shut down. And this is where we're experiencing life almost as if, there's no excitement, there's no real joy, there's not a lot of sensation because we're literally in a deep state of protection in our nervous system. So everything has this, when I was in freeze or fawn, honestly, even the things that I really enjoyed were kind of like, eh, I didn't have
Numb.
passion. I didn't have the aliveness. I didn't feel like lit up from inside, right? And then when I moved myself from that state into fight or flight, that's really where my anxiety lit up. I never experienced anxiety in all my life. I never felt like I was an anxious person. That's because I was shut down, right? So that feeling of anxiety, that feeling of, like trying to chase something or grab a hold of something or attach to something, trying to control your reality. Those are all how fight or flight really shows up in humanity. And it's understanding that breath is really the fundamental way that we can shift our nervous system. Okay, so again, this is science. When we breathe into our bellies, when we breathe correctly, our bellies go out as we inhale and they drop back down as we exhale. When the belly goes out as we inhale, the diaphragm drops down and flexes, and that hits it, like massages the vagus nerve, the parasympathetic vagus nerve. And so when we're breathing deeply into our bellies, we are naturally activating that parasympathetic state, which is the rest or digest. The parasympathetic state is that state of relaxation, that you feel calm, you feel grounded, but it's not just calm and grounded, it's like a sense of ease and peace, right? So what I like to teach is, yes, we can absolutely do breath work where we are doing a very conscious, very intentional, different types of breath pattern. And I do that with my clients. And the most important thing anybody can do is actually shift their breath into proper breathing, the way that we breathe when we're born as children. We're born breathing into our bellies. And then as our nervous system starts to become triggered and we don't process our trauma, we start to breathe up into our chest and we breathe shallow. And I mean, it's ironic, right? Because we're actually not breathing properly. We're not actually getting enough air. And it's interesting that then we also believe that we're not getting enough time, money, love, safety, security. So it's really about breathing into your belly and reprogramming yourself. So what I recommend is that people take breaks. You can set an alarm on your phone, or you can set it up where every time you go to the bathroom you practice this, where you just pause and you just take a couple of nice deep breaths into your belly and really begin to notice how that feels. Because most likely, if you're in a state of a triggered nervous system, it actually won't feel good
Hmm.
because it feels tight and it feels tense. It doesn't feel like when I breathe now into my belly, it's like, oh, there's so much room there and it feels so expansive and like it feels good. But when I first started breathing properly again, I couldn't even breathe into my belly well. It was like my diaphragm wasn't working. And I spent 40 minutes consciously kind of opening up my belly to breathe. And finally, I felt this like, oh my God, that's the biggest breath I feel like I've taken in like in years.
That is really cool, and it links up with something that my pain coach talks about, and how like our core is kind of like a circus tent. And so everything needs to be like tensioned in the right way or the circus tent will fall. And so if you have your belly sucked in all the time, your circus tent strings, they're not taut, and that's going to hurt your back. It's going to hurt like everything that's supporting it. And so even taking these deep breaths can help you with pain everywhere else. Because I know that my back pain, it's been reduced. I had an accident on a boat and I had like a whole thing. But learning to not suck in my belly and letting my body be as it is naturally and being able to do those things, because if you're sucking in your belly all the time, you can't take these deep breaths that you're talking about, right? If you're always like
Absolutely. And, that's also just like a thing, right? Like sucking your belly, right? Like, I think all women feel like we've done that for sure. And, the other side of breathing, again, on a physiological level, is that when you're breathing properly, you're circulating blood. So when we're not breathing properly, we're contracted. We're contracting blood flow. And the blood flow comes from our prefrontal cortex and it drains out of our prefrontal cortex. That's the space of our cognitive thinking. We also find that when we don't breathe properly, we don't have emotional self regulation. We
mm.
aren't as connected to our intuition, our vision, and our imagination. And we're just simply not in our full potential.
That's important, because if you're trying to work on all of those things that you mentioned, regulating my emotions, but you don't start with breathing right, I don't think it matters anything else you do for emotional regulation. Your body is still going to be calling out for help, right? It's going to be saying, no, I need air. So it doesn't matter how happy you are, your body still needs air and you're not giving it to it. That's so big.
Yeah, and it's about understanding that there's so many subtle triggers that we experience as humans that we're not even aware of, right? If you are in any state of scarcity in your subconscious mind, you won't necessarily recognize it. Somebody will say something about money and your body will contract ever so slightly. When you go to make decisions regarding your money, you will not be in a state that is of heightened decision making. You will be in a state that is triggered and is emotional. And I think anybody could agree that you don't want to be making financial decisions from emotional dysregulation, right? You don't want to be making it from fear, from anxiety, from uncertainty. You want to be making financial decisions from a place of clarity. And we do that, we connect to that first and foremost through the breath. So it radically affects our relationship to money and how we handle our money every single day.
That is so cool, right? Because like who would have thought that breathing had so much to do with with your resources, with money. But everything is connected, all the things that we do, and everything is energetic. And so it makes so much sense to break it down to the most fundamental blocks and be like, well, what is the first What's actually like in the hierarchy of needs, right? The first thing we need, air. And that's exactly what you've done. You've gone down to the core and be like, well, what's that first fundamental need that I have? And it's breathing. And if we're not doing it right, none of those other things are going to stack up correctly on top. So I think this is just so important. Now, talk to me a little bit about how can we stay in touch with you?
So my website is alarasage.com, and I'm also on social media, Alara Sage, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube.
Okay, and I don't remember from your intake form, but was there a gift that you had available for the audience?
I have both my podcast, my professional podcast that's called Wealth Embodied. And then I just recently opened up something that's really fun. It's called Living Wisdom. And it's really a secret podcast. It's really just informal. And it's where I'm in the moment of these beautiful epiphanies and these insights. And I bring this through as well as my own personal experience. And I bring this through in a Telegram channel. So I can definitely share that link because it is really very personal and intimate and very connected that I enjoy very much.
Oh, that sounds amazing. And as always, guys, all of those links are going to be available down in the show notes. Now, Alara, as we are wrapping up, I would like to know, what is one of your biggest tips? What is one of your biggest strategies that you have for my audience?
Pause and breathe regularly throughout your day. Promise you, if you implement this strategy, you will recognize how you're beginning to become aware more clearly of your life and make more grounded, clear decisions with regards to your life and your wealth.
I love that. I love that so much. And guys, it's not, there's no big secret out there. There's no like complicated formula. When we're talking about abundance, when we're talking about success, we're talking about the fundamentals, right? And like it sounds silly when I say it like this, but breathing is one of the most important fundamentals. And just learning how we can use something that we already do every day, just a little bit better, right? How can we improve just a little bit? And just taking notice of just how you're breathing in and out can make such a huge difference in your life. This has been absolutely amazing, Alara. Thank you so much for joining me today. And we will catch you guys next time on the next episode of Overcome Yourself, the podcast. Bye.